The sun hung low over the bustling heart of Marrakech, painting the narrow streets with streaks of gold and crimson. The air was thick with the scent of spices, grilled corn, and fresh mint tea drifting from the market stalls. Amid the noise of merchants calling out prices and tourists haggling over souvenirs, a frail young girl named Layla stood at a street corner clutching a small wicker basket filled with roses. Each rose was wrapped with care, though the petals had begun to wilt from the day's heat. She adjusted her faded scarf, pushing back a strand of hair from her forehead, her eyes scanning the crowd for anyone who might buy just one flower. To most, she was invisible, another child of the streets, barefoot and forgotten. But for Layla, every rose she sold meant food for her little brother Karim, who waited back home in their tiny one-room shack. He was too weak to work, and she had promised him she would bring home bread before sunset. As the crowd began to thin, the roar of an expensive engine sliced through the air. A sleek black car, the kind she had only ever seen in magazines left behind by tourists, glided to a stop beside her. The tinted window rolled down, and a man stepped out, tall, confident, and wrapped in the kind of luxury that turned heads. His shoes gleamed brighter than the sunlit tiles, his suit perfectly pressed, his watch glinting with diamonds. Layla froze. The man, Adam Reed, was a self-made millionaire from London visiting Morocco on business. To the locals, he was a symbol of power and arrogance, a man who believed money could bend the world to his will. Spotting Layla, he smirked, intrigued by her ragged appearance and the stubborn determination in her dark eyes. He walked toward her, the sound of his polished shoes echoing against the cobblestones. "How much for one rose?" he asked in English. Layla hesitated, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "5 dirhams, sir," she whispered timidly, her Arabic accented English fragile but polite. Adam chuckled. 5 dirhams, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and waved it in front of her face. "Sell me these roses in Arabic, and I'll pay you $100,000. Layla blinked, thinking it was a cruel joke. People around them had stopped to watch. Vendors peeked from behind their stalls, and even a few tourists paused, phones raised, recording what they thought would be a quick, humiliating scene. Adam crossed his arms, his tone playful yet condescending. "Come on," he said mockingly. "Show me your best sales pitch. Convince me." Layla's fingers tightened around her basket. Her heart raced, not from excitement, but from anger. This was no kind offer, it was a game to him, a display of power. But deep inside, beneath the dust and fear, lived the fierce spirit her late father had always admired. She looked up, straightened her back, and drew in a steady breath. If he wanted to play, she would show him that even a rose from the streets could bloom with dignity. Layla's heart thudded as she met Adam's amused gaze. The street had gone unusually still, the hum of the market seemed to fade as if the city itself waited for her next move. The millionaire stood there, hands in his pockets, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. To him, this was entertainment, a brief distraction before he returned to his air-conditioned car and his world of marble floors and boardroom deals. But to Layla, it was something entirely different. This was her chance to prove that dignity couldn't be mocked, not even by money. She took a deep breath, her voice quiet but steady. "Ya Sayyidi," she began in Arabic, her tone respectful yet firm, "these roses are not meant for you to buy with money. They are meant for people to buy with their hearts." Adam's smirk faltered slightly. The crowd leaned in closer, intrigued. Layla continued, her words rolling like poetry, "Each of these roses carries a story. Maybe a husband will buy one to say he's sorry for the words he should not have spoken. Or maybe a son will bring one to his mother to thank her for loving him even when he forgot to call. Every petal holds an emotion money cannot buy: regret, forgiveness, love, and hope." Her voice grew stronger with each word, confidence blooming like the flowers in her basket. "My father used to sell roses on these same streets," she said softly. "He taught me that flowers don't just decorate, they heal. When he became sick and we couldn't afford medicine, he still told me to smile, to believe that kindness could feed the soul even if it couldn't fill the stomach. He said, 'A rose is not sold for its beauty, my daughter, but for what it makes the heart remember.'" The people watching fell silent. Even the nearby vendor selling roasted almonds stopped shouting his prices. Layla's eyes shimmered with tears, but her voice remained strong. "When my father died, I promised him I'd keep selling these roses, not for money, but for hope. I sell them so my brother can eat. I sell them so people can remember what it feels like to give." She took a single rose from her basket and held it up toward Adam. You asked me to sell you these roses in Arabic, but this isn't a sale. It's a reminder. You can buy my flowers, sir, but not their meaning. Not their stories. Not the love they carry. Adam's jaw tightened. The smug expression he wore just moments ago was gone. For the first time in years, he felt something unexpected, guilt. The way her words pierced through the arrogance he'd built around himself startled him. His mind flashed back to his own mother's garden, to the last time he'd given her flowers before she passed away. That memory, long buried beneath success and wealth, rose sharply to the surface. Layla lowered her hand, her eyes full of quiet strength. So, no, Sayedi, she finished, her tone soft but unwavering. You can't buy these roses with $100,000. You can only buy them with your heart. The crowd erupted into murmurs, but Adam stood still, frozen in place, a man with everything, suddenly realizing how much he'd lost. For a long moment, the world seemed to stop. The air hung heavy between them, a silence that carried more weight than any words could. Adam stood there, his sharp suit and cold confidence suddenly feeling like armor that no longer fit. He looked down at the rose Layla held out, its crimson petals trembling in her small hand. It wasn't perfect, a few edges were wilted, a thorn or two still sharp, but somehow, it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Without a word, he reached into his pocket. The crowd leaned forward, expecting him to laugh, to throw her a few coins for her performance. But instead, he pulled out a checkbook, his pen trembling slightly as he wrote, $100,000. The murmurs grew louder, disbelief rippled through the onlookers. Adam tore the check carefully and handed it to Layla. You've sold them, he said softly, his usual commanding tone replaced by something fragile. Not just the roses, you sold me a piece of my heart I thought was gone. Layla's breath caught in her throat. She looked at the paper in her hands, eyes wide with shock. Sir, I didn't mean for you to really, she stammered. He shook his head. Keep it, consider it payment for the truth I needed to hear. He paused, his eyes lowering to the single rose still in her basket. May I have that one? Layla nodded slowly and picked the freshest bloom she could find. Then take this, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Not as a man buying a flower, but as someone who's learning to feel again. He took it carefully, as if afraid the fragile petals might break under the weight of his touch. For the first time, his hands, the same hands that had signed million-dollar deals and crushed competitors, felt unsteady, human. He turned the rose over slowly, its scent pulling at a memory buried deep inside him. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, heavy with regret. My mother used to love roses, he said quietly. She had a garden full of them when I was a boy. I bought her jewelry, cars, anything she wanted, but never flowers. Not once. I thought they were meaningless. He looked up at Layla, his eyes glassy. Now I realized they meant everything. Tears welled in Layla's eyes, but she smiled gently. Then maybe it's not too late, sir. Maybe this rose can remind you of her, and of who you still can be. Adam swallowed hard, his throat tight. He nodded, clutching the flower to his chest. The millionaire who had once mocked her now looked smaller, humbled by a girl who had nothing but a basket of roses and a heart full of grace. As he turned to leave, he paused and looked back at her. Layla, he said softly, how many roses do you have left? Only these, she replied, glancing at the half-empty basket. Then from tomorrow, he said, his voice firm but kind, I want to buy all of them, every day. But I don't want them for myself. I want you to give them to anyone who looks like they've forgotten what love feels like. Layla's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of joy. She nodded. I will, sir, I promise. Adam smiled faintly and got back into his car, holding the single rose close. As the vehicle disappeared into the sunset, Layla stood there with her basket, her heart pounding with new hope. And somewhere in the backseat of that sleek black car, a lonely millionaire stared at a crimson rose, and for the first time in years, let his heart bloom again.